Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Charles. I want to welcome you guys to another episode of the Dreamerspro Show, where we cover everything from sports, hot topics, classic debates, and entertainment, and where we give you guys a fresh perspective on things and how we see them. And today we have another interesting episode for you guys. But before we get into it, make sure you go ahead and hit the subscribe button, guys. We're trying to get to 50,000 subscribers by the end of this year, so we'd really appreciate it if you helped us reach that target. So make sure you go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Anyway, let me get into this topic here. So we all remember last season, going into the NBA playoffs. For the first time in a very long time, it seemed as if a lot of marquee players, a lot of key players in the playoffs last year got injured. It was crazy, right? You can think of players like Anthony Davis. He got injured. I think he got injured in the playoffs. You think of LeBron James. He was banged up going into the playoffs. That he didn't really perform at his, he wasn't himself. Then, of course, you had Donovan Mitchell, who got injured. I think it was in the second round of the playoffs. Then you had James Harden, who wasn't himself. I think he had a hamstring issue, if I'm not mistaken. Then, of course, we had Kawhi Leonard. He got injured in the playoffs in the second round. Then you think about Giannis, who had that freak accident when he fell down and it looked like as if his knees buckled up. Even he got injured, but he was probably the only player that really was able to return, come back and be himself. And then, of course, we had Kyrie Irving. A lot of people forget that Kyrie Irving suffered an ankle injury in the playoffs, and he wasn't available to play with his teammate and Kevin Durant and James Harden. And I think a lot of people, or some people, felt as if these injuries had a serious impact on the outcome of the season last year. I think a lot of people felt that way, and I was amongst one of those people, to be quite honest with you. I was rooting for the Clippers, and I felt as if that, listen, if the Clippers were able to tie that series with the Utah Jazz, basically beat them in Utah, a place that seemed pretty much impossible to win games, they went in there, they were able to tie that series. Ultimately, they ended up advancing to the next round, where they took the eventual team that represented the Western Conference in the Phoenix Suns. 6 games. I was like, well, if Kawhi Leonard would have been there, I had 100% confidence that they would have been able to beat the Phoenix Suns to make it to their first ever championship appearance for that organization. This is what I felt. And I think a lot of people also felt that exact same way about the Brooklyn Nets, Kyrie Irving. I mean, let's just be honest. Kyrie Irving, usually plays well in the playoffs. And usually, if they had him, an argument could have been made that the Brooklyn Nets could have made it to the NBA Finals. Now, a lot of people may say, well, this, we don't really know. Well, listen, they were missing a lot by not having Kyrie Irving in the starting lineup. Just last season, last season, he averaged 26.9 points per game. He shot 50% from the field, 40% from the three, 92% from the free throw line. They were missing a player that basically gave him the average of 50, 40, 90 season. And oh, by the way, he was getting you 4.8 rebounds, 6 assists, only 2 turnovers, and 1.4 steals per game. So, you'd be hard pressed to really argue against someone that felt as if a player of this caliber putting up those type of numbers had been available for the Brooklyn Nets, that they wouldn't have been in the NBA championship. I mean, it's hard to argue against, given the fact of how close they were able to play the Milwaukee Bucks, and they ultimately lost. But that's neither here or there, because that's not what happened. And I think sometimes we get into this kind of line of thinking where we kind of end up trying to discredit the victor in the end. And the Milwaukee Bucks deserve every iota of respect that they got, because they went out there and won that championship. Period. End of story. So you got to give them their kudos. But anyway, yesterday I was listening to a segment on ESPN First Take, and there was a segment with Stephen A. Smith and the former NBA player Vince Carter, and they were talking about kind of storylines looking ahead to this season, and it was an exchange between the two of them. And I thought that Stephen A. Smith had some very interesting comments to make when he gave his own perspective on who he think would have a huge impact if he were to return this season. So before we go too far, we just want to play you some of his comments that he had to make, and then we're going to come back and give you guys our thoughts on what he had to say. So take a listen to that here.
But there's something that you didn't think about, and I'm here to remind you.
Remind me.
Who's the number 1 team in the East? That would happen to be the Brooklyn Nets at 17-8, right? That would happen to be the Brooklyn Nets, right? That's without Kyrie. What if he comes back? That would be the biggest impact on the NBA this season. Because if Kyrie
it's a question mark.
I understand that. Well, it's all a question mark. It's all a question mark. Because we're looking at guys that are playing, but we understand, again, I'm just talking about impact. I'm just talking about what can shift everything. We could talk about Milwaukee. We talk about Miami. 1 week we raving about the Nets, and then they go against a team above 500, and we're like, who the hell is this team? We rave about Chicago and Zach LaVine and the fact that he's emerging as a star in this league, and then they get bounced last night. All right, once upon a time, I stupidly talk about we here in New York City, and I forgot that Julius Randle and R.J. Barrett refused to use their right hand, one-arm bandits. I just forgot about all of that stuff, okay? I'm looking at Miami, Jimmy Butler and these brothers, they might be ready. I'm looking in the West. I'm saying Kawhi Leonard could come back. I could easily use this name. LeBron could stir the Lakers in the right direction. I could easily use that name. I'll roll with you on Steph because I just think, and CP3, we can't forget him and what he brings to the table. Yep. But I'm going to roll with you on Steph. The one thing that can change everything, and I mean everything, definitively, if Kyrie Irving comes back this season, all of a sudden, Milwaukee don't look as formidable. Miami don't look as formidable, all right? Philadelphia is irrelevant. Atlanta ain't nobody thinking about them. Yeah, you got to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. You got Vince Carter living in the ATL. You got stuff like that going on, but it ain't going to help them, okay? Out west, you looking at everybody else. If Kyrie comes back and Kyrie, James Harden, and KD join forces for a significant chunk of time, that's the one thing that could have us all saying we need to pause and rethink everything we've been saying about everybody.
Now, in that clip, Stephen A. Smith believes that if Kyrie Irving possibly returned, he feels as if that him returning to this NBA season would have the biggest impact on the season. Essentially, that's what he's saying. They were discussing a hypothetical. Who do you think would have the biggest impact? And he said, there's one player out there that you're not taking into account, and that's Kyrie Irving. He said, if he were to come back, it's a hypothetical, which is pretty much what all sports is about. Because some people go, well, he didn't say, my brother, that's all sports is about. What if Jordan played LeBron? Will they ever play? Did they ever play? It never happened, right? What if this guy played against this guy? That's all sports is about. Sports is all centered on hypotheticals. We rarely have great arguments in which the two protagonists that we're arguing with, arguing about, are in the same era. So no. That's exactly what they were talking. It's a hypothetical and it's thought-provoking, and that's the reason they decided to make it a tie. Is Stephen Curry having? I mean, come on, like, so that's what I think he was saying, and I think he has a good point. He has a good point, and as I just outlined, Kyrie Irving had a 50, 40, 90 season last year. He is certainly one of the most unguardable players in the entire NBA because of his handle and his ability to shoot the ball at a very high rate. Given the fact that you cannot guard Kyrie Irving and you cannot send a single coverage at him, if you do that, right, then basically that means Kevin Durant gets to play one-on-one. And James Harden gets to play one-on-one. And if you have a scenario in which you have three players last season, I think their big three combined to average over 75 points just between those three players. I mean, it's absurd. It's insane. You're going to get yourself, they're going to put you in a quandary. You're going to be in jeopardy, and they're pretty much going to, tear it to pieces. So I do agree with him from the standpoint that, listen, Kyrie Irving, if he does come back, he would have a major impact on this season. The problem is no one knows if Kyrie Irving is going to change his mind or not. For now, he seems pretty steadfast in his position where he's not going to play, given them he's just not going to do it, right? And that's pretty much where we have been. However, I do want to make a quick point because some people say you've been pretty tough on Ben Simmons. You haven't said anything about Kyrie. I do have this one point, and I really don't care what anybody has to say because this is what I believe 100%. I believe that Kyrie Irving has the right to make whatever decision he sees best. That whatever decision he wants to make for his career. He's a grown man. He can do whatever the heck he wants to do. That is his prerogative. Whatever. However, the part that I don't like is him getting half of his salary, even though he's not earning it. The fact of the matter is he's not earning the salary. He's not playing any games. They essentially paid him to just go away and say, okay, while you figure it out, we're just going to give you half of your salary. I think they only did that to not ruffle feathers and not stir up any controversy or kind of bad energy between the organization and Kyrie Irving. However, I just don't agree with that. I don't agree with paying somebody that doesn't render their services. I just don't agree with that. If you're paying them $17 million a year, if some people are okay with it, I'm sure there's some people out there that are totally fine with it, and I'm not in that group. And I have every right to feel that way, just as you have every right to disagree. So that's the one part I don't like. I don't think he should be compensated because he's not playing. I think that if Kyrie Irving decides that he doesn't want to play this season, fine, no problem with it, but you shouldn't be paid for that. This is just my opinion, and I'm not coming off of that. If anybody disagrees, that's your bloody business. That's what I think. You shouldn't be paid if you're not showing up to work. Whatever the circumstance, unless you're rehabilitating some type of injury. If you're a player that got injured on the job, then absolutely you should be paid on company side because you were injured on the job. But in this case, he's not injured. He's perfectly healthy. He's perfectly capable of playing. He's just deciding he doesn't want to play. And it's a situation, he has every right to do that. But I don't think the organization should have to pay. And if it was my team, I'm not paying you. Period. End of story. If you don't agree with it, whatever. So those are my thoughts. So the question is, what do you think about the kind of the bold statement that Stephen A. Smith had to make? Do you think that if Kyrie Irving possibly returned, he could have the biggest impact on the NBA landscape this season? Whatever you guys think, please leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section below. Again, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to make sure you go ahead and hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell to be notified whenever we drop our content. Once again, this is Charles here from Dreamers Pro, wishing you guys an amazing day and catch you guys on the next episode.